Hello, and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey.
I'm Dan.
And today is our first released episode of our Acolyte discussion that is happening the day after the episode releases. So From here on out, we're planning on releasing our Acolyte discussion and review videos the day after the episode comes out. So episode will release on a Tuesday night. We're going to release our episode for the Acolyte discussion on Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
Sound good for you?
Oh, that works perfect for me.
Awesome.
And it gives me a lot. I don't go on social media a lot, but when I do, usually stuff relating to the Acolyte, and I see theories and stuff. So I haven't seen anything. I intentionally stayed away. So these are all my own thoughts, unfiltered or filtered.
That's dangerous.
Dangerous?
Oh my God. Dangerous. Wow. With that, we do typically, we are considering doing some restructuring of our format, but we do typically start off our episodes with a little update on what we've been watching, reading, or playing, or been up to. Dan, you want to let us know what you've been up to?
I haven't been up to much recently. I've been playing some Marvel Snap. If you listened to our last episode, I started listening to The Wizard of Oz. It's a great book. And watching Ted Lasso in third and final season.
Wow, you're kind of booking it through that, aren't you?
It's a good show. It's a feel-good show. You would like it.
I know I would. Anyway, I have been traveling. We went on vacation this past week. Something that we are going to talk about in the future, both Dan and I, is my wife and I had the opportunity to go to Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, which was... I'm going to hold my comments because we're going to release an episode where I describe everything, and Dan doesn't know much about Galaxy's Edge, right?
No.
So we're going to kind of do a, is it worth it? How much did I enjoy it? Do you think you would enjoy it, having not been there situation? So keep an eye out for that. But while we were traveling, we finally finished X-Men the Animated Series. Mm-hmm. And we also watched episode 1 of X-Men 97. Oh. So I'm finally into it.
How long are they?
X-Men 97 are longer. They're like half hour, 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Where the original show was 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was on TV. What's TV? But
back in my day.
Oh dear. But I also finally finished the second High Republic book, A Test of Courage, which is the first book with Vernestra in it. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm now into the Dark, I believe, is the next one. So I'm getting through all those things that I've been talking about for weeks.
Nice.
So making some progress. But with that, are you prepared to talk about episode 4 of The Acolyte?
Very.
Me
very
too.
Prepared.
I like this episode. This episode was called episode 4 Day. No hyphen again. But if you listen to our last episode, Dan, enlighten us as to why there might not be a hyphen.
My theory is that the hyphen is when we're showing two different storylines. The hyphen represents May and Osha, the divergence. But these past two, episode 3 and 4, the storylines are connected. We see them. Not to jump the gun. They're in the same place. Uh-huh. So I think that's why we're only seeing one word titles, or
it's really
no slash titles.
Do you think the next episode is going to be titled Night? Is that too direct?
Could be the night of something.
Ren? No.
I don't.
Yeah, we're not going there. Anyway, I don't have much on the title other than it's the daytime for most of it, except for the end.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to talk about that.
Jump right into it.
So that takes us into the story where we open with Kalnaka on Kofar. He's making a little meal for himself. Looks like he was eating grass in his little hut.
I don't know what Wookiees eat.
I don't know. Around his house, though, you can see that there are the markings that look like May's tattoo, or like the markings of the Coven. Do you think he's like losing his mind?
I don't know.
Like it's clearly weighing on him, and it's weighing on all of them.
Some more than others.
Some more than others.
I don't think Indara had remorse.
I don't think she was like...
It's like, oh,
there she is. But yeah, no, I thought it was kind of crazy to see that. I was like, what it made me, we talked about our last episode, like, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened here?
I feel like Torben and Kalnaka both have some, I don't want to say regret, but they definitely are like, this was not what was intended to happen.
And what did they say? Kalnaka, this happens later in the episode, but Kalnaka had been on...
He'd been stationed on Kofar, excuse me.
For 1 year?
No, he was there beforehand, and then he went off the grid for the past
year.
Okay.
How long was he there? Did they say?
No.
Okay.
Maybe they did. I just didn't catch it.
I might have missed it too.
But they went off. He went off the grid.
I know, like he went there to, I think, get away from everything. So it kind of makes sense. But so yeah, the drawings of the tattoos or the markings really did kind of. There's something is not right here.
No.
which again is kind of the theme of the show. Is something is not right here. But I want to break this episode into 2 parts.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about the Jedi story, then we're going to talk about the May and Chimera story.
Perfect.
All right. So, Jedi story starts on Coruscant, where we have Jecki doing some training with a Jedi Master that had some cool hair, very weird, interesting Star Wars hair. Did you notice he had like braids in his like long hair?
Oh yeah, it was weird.
Kind of nifty. But so there's that, and we see Osha walking up to the room where Jecki's training, and she tells her that she's leaving because she doesn't want to be the one searching for May.
Right.
Jecki's obviously upset by this, and there's a cute exchange where they say, like, we can go and exchange stories about Master Soul.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was nice.
Yes.
As we've talked about before, I'm a graduate student. It's like, let's talk about the advisor. It's kind of funny.
Charmadump.
Oh my.
Were you surprised that Osha was able to just walk freely around the temple and walk up to where they were training?
No. Not just because... I don't think it has anything to do with her being a former Jedi. I think it has to do with the fact that at this point, the Jedi were more open. In the High Republic, we see a lot of interactions between, regular people and the Jedi working together. Mm-hmm. Where in, the prequel era, it's very much like the Jedi... Like, I think you wouldn't be able to get admittance into the Jedi Temple in Episode 1.
Let alone where they're training.
I think that it's interesting if you... I don't know how familiar you are with Young Jedi Adventures. We did our tier list of Disney Plus shows.
I didn't watch it then. I haven't watched it since then.
I haven't watched it, but I know that one of the main characters is just a normal person who does not have the Force, isn't a Jedi, but is involved with the actual training. Mm-hmm. So, are we talking about a kid's show right now? Absolutely. But when I say kids show, I'm not talking about like a cartoon. Just literally like it's made for kids.
Child.
But I think it's an interesting idea that I think it kind of supports what we're saying of like the Jedi are more open at this point and all that. But about Osha leaving, do you think she's going to find May herself, or she actually wants to just...
I think she wants nothing to do with it.
I think I agree.
I think she lived as if May was dead for 16 years, and it's easier for her to just assume May is dead now.
And assume the Jedi are going to get her.
Yep, and assume that the Jedi are going to kill her.
Going to have to kill her, probably. Because the Jedi's not going to want to.
Remember, nope, I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Jumping the gun, I apologize.
But that happens, and then we end up in this Jedi meeting. I felt like we were very much so prequels. I was surprised this wasn't taking place in the council room.
Well, there's a reason.
There is a reason. But so a bunch of Jedi, including Sol, Vernestra, Ki-Adi-Mundi, which we'll talk about in a second. I did not think it was him. I actually thought it was just a random Syrian.
I thought it was more. I thought Plo Koon was in the corner.
There is one of his species. I wish I could remember.
They didn't name him.
But
the species.
What is the species? Do you remember?
No,
I don't remember either. Plo Koon species, but they did say it's not him. They confirmed it's
not
him.
Yeah, I feel like if it was him, they would have credited him.
Yes, and made a big deal about it. But the Jedi are all gathered around this hollow table watching May, like footage of May fighting, and they all kind of seem just like,
she's trained.
She's trained by a Jedi, and they're very adamant that she was trained by a Jedi. But before we talk about that, I do want to talk about Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Mm-hmm. What's he doing?
I was really surprised. I mean, I noticed it. I did not think it was the actual character Ki-Adi-Mundi. Mm-hmm. He looks younger. He's got his brown beard,
brown hair,
not his white hair. And this is another thing that has certain people who are going to be mad by everything all up in arms. There is no canon information on the lifespan of his species. There's no canon information on his birth. There's no canon information on hardly anything other than like what we see on screen.
And this is where I have issues with complaints like that.
Mm-hmm.
We know Vernestra is many lifetimes old.
100. She's 100 years old, more or less.
100 years old, still very much so involved.
Mm-hmm.
We know Yoda is alive at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't Ki-Adi-Mundi be alive at this time?
Exactly. And I don't want the Legends dump, but in Legends, Ki-Adi-Mundi had multiple wives because his species didn't have many male. It's like, this is just stuff that we don't need to be talking about, right? Like, I feel like it's a waste of our time, and people who are listening to this time to even talk about it. Like, it's like inflammatory just to make people angry.
Yeah. People
who want to hate this show are going to hate this show.
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens.
Right.
You should be excited that Ki-Adi-Mundi's here.
Yes.
Other than the fact that I don't particularly love the character. I bring him up, though, because it is kind of the irony that in The Phantom Menace, he's the one that says, the Sith are extinct for millennia. And in Attack of the Clones, he says Count Dooku wouldn't murder anyone.
Well,
Ki-Adi-Mundi.
I have some thoughts.
When would you like to dispense those thoughts?
You can finish your statement, then I'll
I was going to...
unleash.
Go ahead, because I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. So go ahead.
This room is very secure for reasons, and so much so that Vanestra even says, we can't tell the council, because then they're obligated to tell the Senate, and they will have to do something. So I feel like Ki-Adi-Mundi could just be like, yeah, there's no Sith actively covering up this operation.
But I will say, this operation has absolutely nothing to do with the Sith as far as he's concerned.
And that's it.
They thought that Indara said No.
Somebody said...
Not Indara, Vernestra maybe. Said something like... Indara was dead at this point. Vernestra said something to the effect of, like, she was very clearly trained by a rogue Jedi or something like that.
Yes. And Ki-Adi-Mundi even, like, kind of complimented her. And was saying, like, oh, well, she's just a little rough around the edges, more or less. But also, can we talk about the symbolism in the room for a second?
Fire away.
All the other Jedi in that room were wearing white robes, unlike Sol, who was wearing his brown field robe. Visually speaking, it felt like he was the black sheep. And I feel like they treat him as the black sheep.
Yes. And this actually segues wonderfully into the point in our notes that I've titled A Rare Joey Problem. We've been doing this for, several months now, probably 2 or 3 months?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've legitimately brought up, like, a real problem that I have. And this is something that, it's not a problem in the sense that it makes the story bad or you shouldn't like it, but I am a huge, if you haven't pieced this together yet, Jedi fan. Yeah. I love the Jedi. It's my favorite group in Star Wars. If something has the Jedi in it, I'm so excited to watch it. It's, like, my favorite part. And I struggle sometimes because it's like, okay, we're going 100 years before the Phantom Menace when the Jedi were at the height of their power, and the High Republic is 200 years before the Phantom Menace and the height of their power. But there's still this what you're saying, the people in the white robes telling the person who's out in the field what to do, and this, like, Jedi bureaucracy sort of thing. And that this is, I don't think it makes me dislike this show at all, but it frustrates me that, like, when were the Jedi, like, at the height of their power?
Just
because there's always...
Were they ever?
And I think that's a fair
I feel like we, as the watchers of the show and the consumers of Star Wars, when we're first introduced to the Jedi, they're in this ivory tower, literally, so high above everybody else. And we're supposed to look up to them as the symbol of what to do, of what is right and wrong. And as we've discussed, too much of right and wrong will lead you down, like, the wrong path. It is not always the best to be so by the book. And that's why I think so many people relate to Qui-Gon and now Sol. Because they understand that sometimes you can't always do. You have to do what will work and what you know is best, even if it's not always the right thing to do.
Or that's better. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. What the rules say. Or
yes. That is
go by the book, or
right.
Cover this up to protect the Jedi Order, that sort of thing. And I think, like, for me, we've talked about this off the air, I don't think on, but, like, that's why for me, like, Ahsoka, even though she wasn't a Jedi,
I'm no Jedi.
She's like the pinnacle of what a Jedi should be, like, helping people and all of that. And I think in the Ahsoka series, she comes to terms with that, of course, but then I don't know. It's like, I think that's the challenge of the Jedi, though, is that they have to spend the entirety of their existence doing the right thing over and over and over again. It's not like, and I think Last Jedi shows us this with Luke. You can't just make the right decision one time and then be like, I'm good forever.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of my challenges with, it's like, okay, we're going backwards, so we have the Jedi at a time where they're not as flawed. And I agree that they're not as flawed here. It seems like they're, like, you can see how they got to where they are.
In this glass castle they're living in, you can see people are taking little chisels and just spider cracks at the moment.
Yeah.
It's starting to crack.
And Palpatine brings a wrecking ball in.
Palpatine does bring a wrecking ball in. But Palpatine could not bring the wrecking ball in if the foundation wasn't already shaky.
And I think, again, I don't want to spend too much time talking about... I don't think this is a flaw of the show. I think it's something that this, like, as we expand further and further, and that's why, I mean, Token Bray mentioned, I hope that the continuation of the Jedi Order after the Skywalker saga shows us the purest form of Jedi, where they're there to help people.
Right.
I hope they're not the enforcers of the Republic and like or whatever is left after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway,
no, they shouldn't be generals.
I'll get off my Jedi soapbox and say that again, they suggest that May is a Jedi offshoot. Again, I want to mention no mention of Sith. They don't say Sith. They don't even think Sith.
Mm-hmm.
They think she's being trained by some kind of Jedi offshoot. But after this meeting, we have Vernestra talk to Sol and say, like, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, I thought she died, talking about May. And he's like, no, what happened 16 years ago? Like, you didn't tell me. And I do want to say that Vernestra here is very different from the Vernestra in the book that I've read. I haven't gotten farther in, but I've seen other people who have read all of them say that there is a disparity between Vernestra, who was like a teenager in the books I'm reading, very like gung-ho, like she almost what Sol is for us in this show. So that's interesting, but you kind of see her slip into like that Jedi Council role kind of like Kiadi-Mundi.
Leadership. But
she does seem to genuinely care. Like she seems like she wants to help May. She wants to keep everything. So I do like Vernestra here, but it is different. So again, Sol says no one would survive May's fall. Like he knew she fell, but he didn't think that there was a chance she would be alive. And Vernestra kind of suggests this idea that I hadn't thought of until, again, a character in the show said it. May could just be a small part of her master's plan.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting because let's say, we'll talk back and forth, is it a Sith, is it not a Sith? But let's say it's a Sith, and maybe this Sith is courting for their next apprentice, or that Sith is the apprentice and is trying to find someone to kill their master. Like, could she just be one of many? Or is May special? Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that question, and obviously we're not meant to right now, but I thought that was an interesting thing that wasn't even in my head.
Yeah. It just shows Vernestra's wisdom. How old. She's been around a lot.
You can tell, yeah.
Yeah. And
get through the whole High Republic conflict and all that. But yeah, so as they do this, Sol essentially says, like, I know how we can stop May. And he goes to stop Osha from leaving. And he convinces her that she should kind of be used as bait for May. Yeah. Did you see the glimmer in Osha's eyes when she thought Sol was asking her to rejoin the Jedi Order, though? That made me so sad. He's like, well, no, not quite. Yeah. I kind of hope we lead up to that, but I also have no clue what's going to happen in the show.
I have no idea. Could it be her trials? We don't know.
Could be. I mean, I think that was really interesting, but basically he says, let's go find May. You can kind of be the bait, more or less. Mm-hmm. And we end up on this transport ship. Did you like the civilian robes joke?
Yes.
I thought it was really good. And then you were kind of like, later on in the episode, giving her like the side eye. Oh, we'll talk about Yord.
Yord Horde?
I'm not in the Yord Horde. I'm in the Sol Patrol.
Is that the Paw Patrol offshoot?
I think so.
Nice.
Sol Patrol. Anyway.
No, that'll be stuck in my head.
Sorry. So these characters, including Sol, Jackie, Yord, Osha, and several other unnamed Jedi. We'll talk about what that means later.
I call them Jedi Bobs.
There were lots of Jedi Bobs on this ship, and I think we know why, and we'll talk about it. But they head to Kofar to find May and Kalnaka. Mm-hmm. We also learned about this new little guy who was messing with Pip, and it's Basil. What did you think of Basil?
It's fun.
I know. I love the aliens. Like, we talked about this several episodes, but it's a weird new alien, and I love it.
And it seems like he's there to do one thing.
And it seems like the last time for me they introduced a character like this, it was Babu Frick, which is like,
oh boy,
I'm not gonna.
Goodness, I can't wait to see all the new Basil toys at work.
I don't like Basil as much as Babu Frick.
Not yet.
But I think Basil will be someone's Babu Frick, if you know what I mean. Like,
not yet. He still could be yours.
It's
Yord's.
Yord. Oh my god. All right. So anyway, we have Basil, and as they land, they start to travel, they start to figure out what his deal is, and Basil is in fact like the tracker. So they, I believe, gave him something that belonged to Kalnaka and said, "Take us to him." And one of my favorite Yord jokes, and I think this is a great time to talk about Yord, is Yord saying that, well, everyone else at the temple wanted to take Shuriwook. I wanted to take something more nuanced in whatever language this guy is. Dan and I are both in academic biology, and Yord reminds us of some of the more stuffy people we've encountered. Would you say?
100%.
I do like Yord. I understand why he's there.
I feel like Yord has a good heart. He's a good heart, but a really not so good brain.
It's exactly what we were talking about with, like, maybe you need to turn off this is what the book says I should do, and, like, pick your head up a little.
He just doesn't seem to think for himself.
No, he thinks with the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like he's like a propaganda machine.
Yeah.
And I saw Star Wars Explained. Star Wars Explained commented this on something that Force Center said, where they said, I wish they had initially joked that Yord was Ki-Adi-Mundi's master because they have the same kind of attitude. They said retroactively now, like, what if Ki-Adi-Mundi was Yord's master? That would be kind of cool.
It'd be so telling.
Also, where's Yord's Padawan?
She probably doesn't want to deal with Yord.
Seriously, it seems like she's doing everything but being with Yord. So anyway, anything else to add on Yord's portion of this adventure here?
I think it leads us into a good conversation with May and Yord. Osha and Yord.
Citizen.
Yes. Osha comes to Yord and pretty much says, did she already have this conversation with Jecki yet? I think she did.
Which conversation?
You need to do what you have to do because Soul won't do it.
Yes.
I think she had that with Jecki in the temple.
And I did want to say real quick before we talk about this conversation, I like that Jecki seemed to be getting more responsibility. Like, she was talking to that alien. She was doing a lot of the stuff. And I like that a lot.
For whatever reason, I feel like Yord and Jecki are on the same plane of existence, even though one's a Jedi Master and one's a Padawan.
He called her like, did you see? I forget what she said something to him, and he was like, "Yes, Padawan." So rude. Anyway, Yord and Osha are having this conversation that Dan was mentioning, where Yord asks, Osha essentially asks Yord to say, like, "I won't be able to take May out. I just don't think I'm going to be able to do it. You have to take care of it if I can't."
Do you think it was interesting that Osha said, "Oh, well, I missed last time," knowing that she intentionally missed her?
Yes, and I think that's explaining why. I legitimately think Osha wants May to be stopped. I think she knows that needs to happen, but I just think she can't be the one to do it. Like you said, you think she's just trying to run as far away from it as she can and just let the Jedi handle it. Which, the whole Born is 2 thing probably is keeping them together.
And Osha even said, like, I do not want to be a part of you. She said that in episode 3, which we didn't touch on, but she said, like, I don't want to be you. I don't want to be an extension of you. I don't want to be 2. I want to be Osha. You can be May. You can be in the Coven. That's not me.
And that gets into some of the unsettling nature of what might have been happening with the Coven. But that does also allow us to move further on with this story, where they then have this encounter with these things on the trees, and they can kind of feel something's off. Osha touches this thing, and this is where we start to get to Osha starting to reconnect with the Force, which I thought was interesting. I wasn't quite like, I mean, as we said, they show a character reaching for something with the Force in episode 1. You anticipate that character is going to be reconnected with the Force at some point, Sabine style. But we start to see her start to sense the bug, but that does lead us to this encounter where Soul has to protect her from the bug. I saw some people saying, like, very Jedi of him to pull his lightsaber, but I feel like that bug could have actually hurt.
What were they supposed to do? What if the bug woke up the other bugs?
And, like, you could make the argument, like, maybe Ezra style befriend the bug, but it's like, I don't think this is un-Jedi of Soul to protect Osha.
And I'm glad you brought up Ezra. Just reaffirming the Force connection to animals, as we saw in Rebels, as we saw in Ahsoka, as we saw in the Bad Batch, and once again in the Acolyte. But yes, I think Soul made the right choice.
Because Soul has only ever ignited. Is this the first time we've seen Soul's lightsaber ignited? I think so.
I don't know. My perception is screwed because I know what it looks like from the poster.
I know. Me too.
So I'm like, I know it's blue. I know I've seen it before.
But I think, regardless, if we haven't, I think Soul is igniting his lightsaber to defend anytime. We've seen it, if we have seen it.
And it just so happened that the bug, like many bugs, are attracted to light.
Yes, I thought that was clever. I didn't quite realize what was happening. I thought that was kind of clever.
And it ran right through it.
I like Soul a lot. But, so we have that, and I don't have a separate big ideas section for this episode, But I think that Jackie, in discussing things with Osha and like her past, I think she says the big idea of the show.
Yeah.
Of the episode, of the show, of everything. And that quote, I wrote it down. You know I'm not the biggest quote guy, so this really must have had to have struck a chord for me to write it down. This is, we are defined by what we survive, not by what we lose. Think about any Star Wars story I think you can apply this to. Mm-hmm. In any context, whether the loss is a person or a planet or... You could apply this to any Star Wars character's lesson. And I think it really is like... This is the thesis statement for this show, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved it.
Me too.
I think, because like I said, in the last episode, it was very much plot-driven, and I don't think there were lessons to be had yet. Mm-hmm. And I think this is, like, as in-your-face as it can get. Like, this is what this show is about. Mm-hmm. Moving beyond things. And I like that a lot. Yeah. Anything else to add on that?
Not yet.
I'm a little scared there. So anyway, we talked about Osha reconnecting to the Force, but that kind of brings us to the end of their story prior to the events of the conclusion of the episode. Mm-hmm. That then will transfer us to when I want to talk about May and Kymir's story, which was kind of happening intercut throughout the Jedi story, so it's happening at the same time. Kymir is acting super goofy, like we've seen him knocking stuff over. Oh, this is good. And he kind of leads May to where he confirmed Kelnaka was living.
Yeah.
Still, something's not quite right here. With why does he know? How does he know where Kelnaka is living and all of that?
And she asked him, like, why are you here? Why are you with me? Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, I'm here because I want to be with you. I want to help you. Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where we kind of get into that conversation that they're having, where Kymir tells May, just because Osha's alive doesn't change the deal you made with the Master. Yeah. And it kind of sounds like it's like he's trying to get it off as like, I'm your little brother, like poking and prodding kind of is what it felt like. And he also brings up the idea of like, do you know why you need to kill a Jedi without a weapon? And she's unsure of this. And this comes up again later in the episode, and she's still unsure.
And I think it was so funny. She's like, you want me to kill a Wookiee without a weapon?
And it's just like, I think it's highlighting that she's not for the cause. I think she's
not bought in. Yeah,
she's team kill.
She's team
these four Jedi.
She's team May
and Osha's memory. I think.
Yeah, team May, avenge Osha.
And you said this in the last episode. Like that's her motivation.
Yeah, and
you can see it in the last episode and here. Mm-hmm. That's the motivation for May. And I think that kind of plays into what we're saying. And then May kind of turns to Kymir and is like, you're asking me a question, I'm going to ask you a question. Have you seen the Master's face? And he kind of like stumbles and delays for a second. He's like, you know I haven't. Or something like that. There's just something off about Kymir.
Yes.
Is the question here is like, how does he even know the Master? What is his, what exactly is he? What's his job description?
Yes.
What is it? Do you know what it is?
Right now?
He's not just a chemist or an alchemist.
He's not. He said he's not. He said he's not.
I know.
He said what his preferred.
He gets her what she needs.
Yeah, he's like
the fixer.
I think he's like a gun runner style. Gun runner, that sort of black market.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So then it's like, how would he know the Master? Was he hired by?
Right.
It seems like he's had direct connection to the Master.
I feel like he's a smuggler.
Mm-hmm. Who like I think Kymir works for the Master, not Osha. May, I'm so sorry. We've both done this several times.
I don't know who he works for yet.
But I don't think he's an acolyte. I don't think air quotes.
I don't think he's an acolyte either.
No, we're going to talk about this.
But I do. Before we move on, in the same conversation, like you kind of just brought up, he brought up again about the importance of. He reminded May like. You need to do it without a weapon. And May's like, that's impossible. And you could see he got really angry for a second. And he was like, no. Why do you think that is, Joey?
I mean, are we going to do it now? Or are we going to
We can do it. I do have one question, though.
Before I answer that other question?
Well, no, we'll do that at the end.
Okay.
We'll do it at the end.
Okay. Why is it, Dan?
How do you think... I think I know the answer to the question. How is May supposed to kill a Jedi without a weapon?
Something we've seen her do twice. Reach for the lightsaber. Maybe 3 times? Twice. Mm-hmm. Did she reach for Torben's lightsaber? I mean, she couldn't get anything around there. But I think she's going to disarm the Jedi, take their lightsaber, and then kill them with it. And for me, I think thematically that's twisting the Jedi's idea on their head. That weapon's supposed to be used for protection and defense. This weapon is your life. Obi-Wan, all these quotes and all of this. But I think this, like, what is the quote from the Master at the end of the first episode? Like, the Jedi live in a dream and the Acolyte's job is to kill the dream. I think, like, it's spitting in the face of everything the Jedi believe in. And I think that's the point. But I think May doesn't see that because she doesn't care.
Yeah. I had a different interpretation of how she's supposed to kill a Jedi. I thought she was supposed to use the Force.
I think
we know it's fairly simple for a strong Force user to Force choke somebody.
Darth Vader.
We saw Darth Vader do it with 2 fingers.
And I think you could apply the same logic I described as a lightsaber to that as well. So one or the other.
So all we can say for sure is Kymir has definitely thought of an answer to this question.
I think he has the answer.
I think he
whether he was given it or came up with it.
He knows.
He knows. And we'll leave that be for now. So they're kind of stopped, and Kymir's like, I'm going to go get some water. And then May comes up with this. This threw me through a loop. I was not expecting this. May screams and gets Kymir to run back, and she actually traps him. You see her kind of walk off with this rope. May kind of traps Kymir in this like rope system. He's hanging upside down, and she essentially tells him like she no longer wants to be a part of this. Osha being alive does change things, and she's going to tell the Jedi everything to avoid being like put in prison or in trouble.
Yeah.
I think there's only one word that could make the Jedi shiver like that, and it's Sith. It makes me think that this is Sith related. We're going to talk through it. Like, is it Sith? Is it dark side? What's the deal? I think it's Sith. Yeah. I think this is it. But one thing I did want to say is I saw this interview where they were talking about Kymir being upside down, and like they were talking about the stunt aspect of it. But they had said that initially May was supposed to be the one that was hung upside down. And they said, we thought it would be better for the story if Kymir was upside down. I don't quite know what to make of that. I saw someone put that clip and it was like, I don't even know what this means anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you saw it beforehand, you might have been like, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's just kind of, I'm just putting it out there.
I'm going to choose to ignore it.
Okay, I'll ignore it as well. I mean the actors, what they say doesn't necessarily matter. No. Like the guy that played Yord said Anakin blew up the Death Star. Oh, well. Twice. He doubled down. It's fine. But anyway, May traps Kymir, and I do want to talk about like this twist. Yeah. I was not ready for it. I thought this show was going to be about killing the... First of all, I had no clue what the show was going to be about. Then based on the first 2 episodes, maybe 3, just because they didn't really go any other direction, that this was going to be about the mystery with the 4 Jedi, and I think this kind of kicks the door open for this to be a free-for-all for the next 4 episodes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, at this point, we are halfway through the series.
That's going to be how we end this episode. Don't talk too much about half. I want the overall thoughts on that first half, but we'll do that later.
My bad.
What did you think of the twist, though?
I thought it just really confirms what we've been discussing about May and what May's intentions are and her goals are.
Osha. Still can't get over the name Osha.
Yeah. I think May dropped a pretty good quote before she left Kymir.
Okay.
Of the, I'm not worried about the Master. Because for me to be worried, he'd have to know where I am and then come and find me.
Basically saying he does not have enough time.
Yeah.
Because she said Kanaka's 10 minutes that way, right?
Yeah, she's like, he's right there.
So she was going to turn herself in.
Yeah.
Presumably go to the temple on Coruscant where this Darksider likely would not go.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was intriguing. And she basically says, all right, bye, I'm going to go find Kanaka. So now we're at the point of where our stories from this episode and from, the series so far converge. And that's where we have the Jedi. We cut back to the Jedi. They're kind of walking through the woods, and we see Sol kind of like stop. And he's just like he feels something. This is similar to something we've seen before. Had a very similar reaction when Torben was killed. Right in front of him. Not in front of him, but
What happened? Whatever could have produced that reaction? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We'll get there. So something's wrong. And then he immediately turns to Osha and is like, when we get back to the ship, I'll explain everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we obviously know that Sol is aware. I've been talking about how I want Sol to be innocent. Sol is definitely aware of what happened, and he may be, based on that quote, maybe more guilty than I am hoping for.
There's a reason Sol was going to be last. Whether it's because he had the most to do with it, or he had the least to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Regardless, he has been hiding stuff from Osha.
And yes, there was no accident when May was going to keep him till the end.
Here's the question I have. Do you think May knows whatever Sol is going to tell Osha?
No.
Do you... Because there's a point where we see May and Osha are separated. Then they converge on that broken bridge. Do you think May saw whatever Sol is going to tell Osha? I think it's possible May might know. Why does she hate these Jedi so much?
Right.
So I think there's something here. This just makes me really nervous, and I feel like saying something like that almost puts a target on Sol's back. But it's like, well, he's not going to get to tell her. Or if he does survive, which I really hope.
Survive what?
What happens at the end of the episode? We'll talk about it. Does Osha find out from someone who's not Sol,
mm-hmm.
and it makes her upset and all that jazz? So that's what I'm just really worried. This makes me nervous.
Yeah. I
didn't check my Aura Ring stats to see if I was stressed, but I started to get stressed around this point, and it didn't go away.
Yeah.
Because after that, we cut back to May, who's rushing into Kaunaka's house, and she's ready to turn herself in. But when she arrives, she kind of sees him slumped over. Oh, maybe he's taking a nap, I thought. He just ate dinner.
He's after post-food nap. We all do it.
What we see, though, is something you mentioned as to do with the logo, the old logo. There was a very strong slash through Kaunaka's chest, which looked like the old logo, I presume is what you're going for.
Yeah, absolutely.
It did. And she immediately says, he's here. She knows.
Yeah.
And then I loved how, it got dark. It was sunset. It wasn't like it came out of nowhere from day to night, but it was like, oh, it's happening.
The darkness is here.
Uh-huh. And I think it's fitting that that's how the episode day ended,
mm-hmm.
and why I think it might be night. I don't know. That's really cheesy of me. But anyway, the Jedi arrive here, and they know May's in there.
Yeah.
And they're kind of shouting out, kind of in the name of the Republic, all that. Like, she needs to come out and turn herself in. But before she can even... I initially was like, oh, God, what a mess.
Mm-hmm.
How can she possibly convince them that she didn't do this? And then we don't really need to worry about that too long, because we see this figure...
Yes, it keeps panning to Osha.
Yeah. And the way that we have this set up, there's Kaunaka's house that looks kind of like Shrek's house. Then there's the line of Jedi, and then there's Osha.
Yes.
Farthest from the house.
Yes.
And cuts to Osha, cuts to May, back and forth, and you're waiting for something to happen. It's very horror coded, I feel like, this scene. We see the bad guy, Darth Teeth, the mask, the master, the guy we've been talking about the whole time, float down slowly. Which, this is my second mention of Count Dooku for you. Did you see that they said this is like an Easter egg to the old 2D Clone Wars, where Count Dooku floated down gently? There's your second Count Dooku mention.
I know, it was great.
I was like, did he just fly?
And the cape.
Oh, it was. And my wife was like, I didn't even notice what was happening because it was kind of out of focus.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was meant to be as jarring and unsettling as possible, and it worked.
Oh yeah.
So then he, they're cutting back and forth, and he's slowly moving towards Osha, and Osha just has this mortified look on her. She didn't move.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Do you think that's just because she's scared and he's creepy?
I don't think she realized. I mean, because remember, Sol turns around first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Osha realizes something's wrong.
But she turns around, and the bad guy moves towards her.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this look of genuine fear in her face. Do you think she's just scared, or do you think she's able to sense something through the Force? Because this episode went through great lengths to establish that she's reconnected to the Force.
Probably a little of both.
This is where we didn't really talk about...
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Is this master, Sith or otherwise, able to mask his presence? Because only one Jedi sensed him at first,
mm-hmm.
in Sol, who is, from what they seem, the most in tune with the Force.
Mm-hmm.
So could he be masking himself?
Potentially. I mean, like, that's something that Palpatine did actively.
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I think of sensing through the Force, like kind of like sound. Like, you're making a noise, but it's like, how good is your hearing almost?
Right.
So is he good? Is he not making a lot of noise intentionally? Or are the Jedi bad at hearing, other than Soul?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great question. But I was wondering if Osha could, like, you've seen the theories. Did we mention this last time that Mother Coral could potentially be the bad guy, the master?
Potentially.
I think that mortified face could be sensing that. We don't have much time to ruminate on
the
that.
The teeth mean something. What do they mean? I don't know.
I feel like
the teeth are going to play a pretty big role in.
It's such a good mask. I love it. It's such
Black
great
Series
Star Wars
one's going to come out.
I saw a funny tweet that had like a guy like throwing his credit card and like the Black Series helmet, the Black Series helmet, the Black Series helmet, but which it would kind of not fit in with my Mandalorian helmets over there. But
I'd get it.
I'll get it anyway. Who cares about consistency? But anyway, this is happening. He turns his lightsaber on. I was convinced Osha was done for. And then I was like, is May going to be our main character now?
I thought he was going to just turn it on through her.
Yeah, that's what I thought, like Han Solo style.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, she's done. So what was going on there? Why did he want to spare her?
I don't think he cares about her.
You don't think?
No.
Okay.
For the same reason that Vanestra said, is May part of a bigger plan?
Which is very possible. But the episode ends, I guess, so he ignites his lightsaber. The Jedi all ignite their lightsaber, which was just such a cool Star Wars moment to see green, yellow, blue all over the place. We haven't seen that many lightsabers on screen in a long time.
Attack of the Clones.
It's so refreshing and just nice to have. I was like, we're going. We're cooking with gas now. And this Force user, the Darksider, effortlessly holds his hand up and Force pushes the entire Osha.
He flicked Osha.
Literally
flicked
Osha
her
aside,
to the side. Just
and
went...
then gently moved his hands, kind of like a weird, like an unsettling way, and pushed all the Jedi back. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. This is like, I think it's really showing just how powerful this guy is, or girl. Jenna, my wife, is convinced that this person is a man based on the hands. We paused it. We looked at the hands. We'll talk about that in a second. But this is where the episode ends. They're pushed. The Jedi are pushed. And then it ends. I said, what a rude way to end an episode. This is the first thing I said when this is over.
You literally texted
I said it to you. I texted it to you. I said it to my wife. What a rude way to end an episode. But, oh my God, we're going to sit down next week, and it's going to be like, yeah, oh my God. But I have thoughts on next week. But that then takes us here to the end. We've got a few big questions left. Like I said, we talked about the big idea, I think. It's that Jackie quote. But I have some big questions I want to talk about. The identity of the Darksider. Is it a Sith? I'm leaning towards
I think yes.
Sith. Is it Chimere?
I don't know. I feel like he's the obvious answer.
He is, and it's almost like too obvious.
He just seems to know too much.
And the fact that he was on that planet,
like
in such close proximity to Kalnaka. It's not like she tied him to a tree and left him 3 hours away from Kalnaka. He was just as close as she was.
Yeah.
And she was kind of strolling. So if he ran... I don't know, and he was carrying that bag around, which could have had his helmet in it.
Can you imagine if he just drops his bag in the ship and it clings?
Whoops.
What was that? Canteen?
It sounded a lot heavier than a canteen. But I don't know. I think they want us to think that.
I don't know.
My wife said that she would be disappointed if that was the case.
I feel like Chimere just knows too many of the intricacies. Like, why would Chimere care?
And, get upset when she did
that. He gets visibly angry that May is like, this can't even be done. Mm-hmm. And he's like, come on. Yes, it can.
I think it's something's going on here. 100%. Mm-hmm. Mother Coral?
I don't know.
I'm going to say less likely.
Hot take. I don't think Mother Coral made it off of Brendok.
I
don't think she died with the rest of them.
I think she could have been killed elsewhere, yes.
I think our friend with the green lightsaber, who we saw perish in episode 1, that'd be a sweet fight.
That would be cool. I think whenever we go back to Brendok, I think we're going to be in for a Star Wars-y treat / sadness. But the third bullet point I have here, and the last one is: does it even matter? Will we? Like, I think it's possible we could potentially not even figure out who this is. Maybe that's something for another season. Maybe it doesn't even matter. I have the example I wrote down next to it is Marek from Ahsoka. Who's behind it? Is it Starkiller? Is it? It didn't matter. He was just a character.
Yeah.
And I think in this case, it wouldn't be like, oh, he's a green fart cloud.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like, this is so mysterious. Like, we don't even know who or what this could even be.
I don't know. I feel like we're gonna know who it is. Whether they let's say they take off the mask or they give something away. I think we're gonna, by the end of the show, we will know the identity of the master.
How do you feel if the mask comes off and we have never seen that character before? I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the context. I feel like we have to know, whether we don't know the character itself, I feel like we're going to have to know of the character.
I agree.
Why are we going to just see, story value? It's just not a great story to introduce.
I don't feel like we've introduced enough characters for it to not be Chimera or Mother Coral.
Mm-hmm.
And Mother Coral, I think, is unlikely. Not just because of the horns and the helmet, but...
Didn't even think about that. Maybe she just has a nice little mold.
It is a big helmet.
Double mold.
It's a big helmet. But anyway, we can leave that be. We talked about whether... I'm leaning towards, actual Sith.
Yeah.
I think this person with the red lightsaber is a Sith.
Or a Sith apprentice, yes.
And that kind of brings me to, I've seen some theories where it's is this person an apprentice recruiting someone to kill the master?
Yes.
Or is it the master recruiting the apprentice?
I saw, and the one that makes the most sense to me, I think, is it is an apprentice recruiting their apprentice for when they make the move on the master.
The Ventress, if you will.
Yes, the Ventress.
I think that's
the Savage.
That's what I'm kind of hoping for. I think that'd be really interesting because then it implies that there's someone else.
Yeah.
Darth Plagueis?
Could be
Darth Tenebris? I think that's Plagueis' master. I don't know. It's legends.
And we know from other Star Wars, they're not always successful.
No. And so this bad guy with the teeth mask could be pretty inconsequential even.
Could be Chimera. Theoretically, I don't want to... It could be Chimera does all this play to make a move on the master and just doesn't.
That would be wild.
Couldn't do it.
No. I have a few more questions that I think are going to lead into kind of what we were talking about. The first is, what will happen to Osha and May? I don't think either... I think they have some plot armor, I feel like. But if one of them were to go, what would happen? Would it play...
I think they would react oppositely. I think if Osha were to die, I feel like May would fully embrace the dark side. If May were to die, I feel like Osha would finally be able to let the attachment go and fully accept becoming a Jedi.
I think that would be interesting. I don't really have much more to add to that, but I just thought, what could happen here? And that does bring me into my last thing. Did you have something to add? I'm so sorry.
I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if one of them died.
I kind of agree, but I don't know.
I don't know which one.
I feel like they're setting Osha up to be the main character.
I disagree. I think it's going to be May.
Huh. I think this is my light side bias, but I think they hid Osha from being the main character from the promotions and stuff, which is why May seemed to be more at the forefront. But I don't know. I think the story's about both of them, and I don't think they're going to kill either of them off. Is my actual answer.
Not yet. I think
anyway,
episode 8.
My last thought before we talked about the halfway point of the series is: are the Jedi equipped to handle this threat?
No. We just watched them get pretty effortlessly tossed, and even Vanestra kind of brought it up in their meeting with Soul. She might be untrained, but she got by you.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like this is even this might even challenge Obi-Wan. Anakin, this was extreme.
Don't say the A word. I don't think you can challenge Anakin.
I think Anakin is often put on a pedestal that he deserves, but could be knocked down from.
Maybe.
Anyway, I think this threat is very challenging. Is all I have to say, and I think that the Jedi Bobs might go. I think some of our main characters might go. Yeah. It's possible. And this is one of the things that I love about this show. And this can tie into, we're halfway through 4 of 8. What do we think? And For me, it's like I love seeing and following the characters that we know. I loved watching Ahsoka building off of Rebels. I love watching the movie, seeing what's happening with my favorite characters, Mandalorian, all that. Mm-hmm. But to not have any clue, like, well, they're not going to kill Ahsoka in the Ahsoka show.
That is true.
Like, I just not knowing, like, I have fear for every one of these characters.
Anybody's fair game except Venestra.
Not even. Venestra, the books will be done by the time this has happened.
Oh.
Yeah, no one is fair game. Not a soul, except for Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Oh, what a shame.
I know.
God, he's probably devastated when he heard of Kelnaka's death.
The droid attack on the...
Sith attack.
What about the Sith attack on the... Well, see, you'd have to know the Sith are there. Don't tell Star Wars theory. Anyway, yeah, I really love this show. It's so not... And I kind of led into this. It's so not what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
But in the best way. It's so enjoyable to watch. It's so enjoyable to learn more about all these characters. And it just brings a smile to my face to have all these Jedi in this new era and really tell a new story so far removed from everything. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite part about it, is like it just feels so different. And I love being able to form attachment to new Star Wars characters. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that people struggle with, and why you see a lot of the whining that is happening now is like it's hard to embrace new things. It was hard when people watched the prequels for the first time. It's hard when people watch the Clone Wars for the first time. And I think it'll trickle down all the way to people are going to love the sequels. People are going to love all the Disney flesh. It's just a matter of like accepting. And, you know, the people who are... George Lucas always says it's made for children. The people who are children to come and they're like, no, this is actually great.
Yeah.
I gave my long-winded spiel. What do you think halfway through?
I think it's great. I think it's different.
So different.
Like you said, we're getting the mix of what you like and what I like about Star Wars. Mm-hmm. We're getting this whodunit, kind of gritty,
horror-ish now?
While they're running around with lightsabers during the High Republic era.
Uh-huh. It is...
We had almost a whole Force-dedicated episode.
Mm-hmm. New weird... I love weird Force things. I love Mortis. I love World Between Worlds. I love all that stuff. So, the witches and the whole thing, like, that's just right. It is Ahsoka and Andor, the weirdness of Ahsoka, the zaniness of Ahsoka, slid together with the intrigue of Andor.
Not to backtrack. I just thought of something.
Freeform.
You mentioned that the Master had a very specific, weird almost motion with their hand.
Yes, it was very distinct. We were looking at it, and like the fingers look a little like...
Did it happen to match up with any of the motions by the Coven during their...
I don't know.
Because like you said, Mother Anastasia is very handsy.
In a very particular way.
And when they were doing their ritual, they were moving in a very distinct...
We're going to have to go
almost wavy way.
We're going to have to like do some instant replay.
But I feel like if we go down that road and we're wrong, it could just make us disappointed.
I spent the entirety of the Bad Batch Season 3 coverage thinking Tech was alive.
Well, I'm 1-0, so
I'm still disappointed. Anyway. I think that's about all I have to say. That's about you.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic.
I seriously, when it ended, I was like,
that's it?
But one other thing. I skipped this. And I think it's a good way to end this. Even though halfway through might have been a better way to end it. Do you think we're going to pick up with Master Soul on the ground, standing up? Or do you think we're going to pick up back on Braddock?
Ooh. That's tough. I feel... in my non-answer to this question, I will say I think next week we're going to see what we saw in the trailer.
The fights?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we're going to open with that. Now, if we intercut to Brendock, because who knows, there's probably going to be dialogue. We know the Master.
I don't think it needs to be an entire Brendock episode to show the rest of it.
What I think could happen is Soul and the Master are fighting, trying. Master's, off and Jedi Bob over there is talking
left
to Soul.
And right.
I can only go left and right so many times.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And would say, like, do you remember this? Or throw out a statement like, when you did this, and then we'd cut back to see
what exactly happened on Red Rock.
Right.
I like that. So you think we are 100%? I mean, I hate to. It's not concrete. You think we're going to see at least some of this fight that they're setting up? I think it would be very, very. The audience. They'd have to assume that the audience would be very patient to wait another week to see that. The way they ended it. I hope for the fight, of course. But anyway, anything else to add for this? You have a smirk. What do you got to say?
Do we think May's gonna kill the Master without a weapon?
That would be so good. That's Star Wars, right there. Killing with his red lightsaber.
Yep.
That's the Star Wars lesson.
Chimera would take the mask off and say, "You've done well,"
and like kind of leave her with like the maybe you are a Sith after all situation. Ooh.
It would be so
good,
so fitting.
But also, we have to kind of navigate the possibility that like they can't know that this is a Sith. Our characters can't either have to die or can't know that this is a Sith because they would go back and say something. So they're not going to kill it.
They're not going to
They're not going to Rogue One it, are they?
Well, I disagree when you say they're going to have to say it's a Sith.
You're right, because then it would they'd have to willingly cover it up, which, as I've talked about, I don't want to happen.
And they've already shown that they're willing. I hate to throw out the C word. They're willing to selectively hide things.
They're already covering it up
from the council.
The council doesn't know. The Yoda doesn't know this is happening.
Yeah,
and I feel like maybe if Yoda did know this was happening, maybe the Sith wouldn't exist. Anyway, that's a loaded conversation. Wow, and this is a great show.
Gets you thinking.
Really does. And Jedi, yes, I love the Jedi. All right, anything else to add?
No, can't wait to see if next week's the last week of the Yord Horde.
Oh, nervous. As long as the Soul Patrol's still going.
I don't think the Soul Patrol is going to survive.
Ah, that's so rude.
I'm sorry.
In one of the trailers, I'm not going to talk about trailers. It's okay. Don't depress me anymore. Go ahead. You could say it.
I don't think Mr. Soul Patrol is going to make it out of the series.
I think he could.
I think his final act of good will be sacrificing himself to save the twins. To save May. Yeah. Which he believes he should have done.
And then that'll allow May to kill the Master. Dang it. With that, thank you so much for listening.
I'm so sorry.
We always appreciate it. Please consider giving us a subscription or review on the podcast platform of your choice. And consider watching the video versions of the shows on YouTube.
Yes.
Feel free to give us a follow on Twitter or X at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And we also do have a Facebook page, which is Blue Shadow.
Yes.
With that, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we will see you next week.
Yes, thank you. And if you guys have any ideas of who the Sith could be or the Master, let us know. We look at things. Joey and I look at things from the same pair of glasses.
It's true.
I'm in one lens, he's in the other. Slightly different prescriptions, but generally the same lens. So if you have anything different, please let us know. We'd love to hear and discuss.
Dan's girlfriend thinks it's Master Soul. With that, thank you very much, and we will see you next time.